This is a special episode with Michael Crosby, and we are now involved in a special edition of Election Pod. Tonight, basically, we are going to help Americans understand the truth. We're going to help them understand the tactical table. And we're going to help them to be able to participate in saving tens of thousands of people's lives effective immediately. To start off with, we're going to begin different understandings. There are a lot of things out there that are theories. There are a lot of things that are statistics. There's only a certain amount of things that are science and hard science. Certain repeatable, verifiable facts. When you consider that there have been people effectively deeply concerned, they believe that 3,800 children die each year from cheese, and that a total of about 60,000 people die each year from cheese. The importance here is if we look and say, well, how many children are dying from mass shooters in schools? And this is important. So basically we have an understanding of statistics. 3,800 versus a statistic that's considered to be less than 380. Less than 1/10. So when we have people saying that statistically and scientifically, the thing we need to do to save more children's lives immediately is to ban cheese. Yet for some reason, this concept is not being grasped into the minds of citizens. We could do it right away. There are people like me that have been mentioning it basically for more than 20 years. Oh, from time to time, that is. And there seems to be no takers. So with me, it's like, if you listened to me the first time 20 years ago, how many more children would be alive today? What is that number? If you only listened to me 10 years ago, how many children would there be? If you listen to me right now, how many children can be saved just between now and January if we immediately act and ban cheese? Certainly, over the course of the next 14 months or so, we can save a substantial number of that 3,800. When we consider the importance of different types of legal determination, different types of scientific determinations, we have to pay attention. Because let's say that somebody got in a car and they killed 3 people because they were drunk. They would have to go to prison. Is this correct? Is that what would happen? Let's continue to explore this area. It's very important. So, if somebody took a gun and they went into a school and they murdered 5 people, that person definitely would have to go to prison. Statistically, that would be a guarantee pretty much of life in prison. But in some places, that would be a guaranteed death penalty. If we're looking at serial killers, mass murderers, when you get to the point where people have killed 10, 15, 20 people, some of those people are in prison for life. Some of them are being psychologically examined to get a better scientific understanding. And many of them are in death row. They're effectively going to be executed. If we continue to evaluate, we have more determinations. What happens when you have people that kill 170 people? There are people that have been caught basically giving drugs to people in rest homes, in disability centers, and killing vast numbers of people. And these people, of course, are either spending life in prison, or they have already been executed, or they're going to be executed at some point in time. Effectively, you get to a certain point where the numbers of people that are murdered indicate an understanding that there's no longer a tolerance to say that somehow there's a possibility of these people being redeemed. And we do have these numbers. You can look at a lot of material on the web. You could get an idea fairly fast. If you can't find direct statistics, you can still get a pretty good idea. What about the logic of people who were taking care of people that decided that they were going to give them sugar, a placebo, because They wanted to deny them of their medication, either to save money or to kill them. So people died in large numbers. This has happened. People were in care and they were denied their medication. And in the same way that we have caretakers that gave medication that killed people, you have caretakers that would not allow parties to have their medication, and they killed also vast numbers of people. This is real. This has happened. Historically, this has happened a fairly long time. We had somebody that decided to put people on the tomato diet. Some of you might be able to access that and find more information on that. What's important here, if we continue to scale up different types of understanding, when you get to the point where people are committing an act, you have to establish, are they crazy? Are they psychopaths, sociopaths? Just plain evil murderers? Did they do this out of a form of negligence? We can examine the concept of negligence and understand that people who negligently operate a vehicle because alcohol that kill a family of 4 from Idaho get punished. They are punished. They're put in prison. If you have a bus driver and people end up getting killed because of that, or a bus is involved, again, mass deaths are involved. People have to be punished. Even when the definition is negligence, people must be punished. And there is basically a consideration in generality that the more people that parties are responsible for killing, the more time that they will have to do in prison. This is a general formula of our justice system. The more crime you commit, the more punishment there will be for you. Unless, of course, you're an LLC. That seems to be a different area of argument. So it's important at this time to take a few moments and review and ask yourself, who are you, really? Who are you? I'm going to continue now with a larger understanding, a larger situation. And we're going to have the opportunity here as citizens to participate and save tens of thousands of people's lives. We're going to pull out the calendar. If you don't have one, just imagine that you pretty much know what a calendar is. We're going to go back 20 years. And we're going to begin to understand a sequence of events. And the sequence of events is some people decided that they somehow had parental authority to deal with people that could not make their own decisions, to deal with people that were incompetent, to deal with people who had criminal intent. This is a very important area because we need to understand the truth. You need to understand the truth. It's very important to understand who you are. It's very important for other people in certain situations to understand who you are. So if we're looking at that calendar 20 years ago, let's just say we see a whole spanning calendar from then to now, there's a process that started happening. And that is to say that new types of colds and flus kept evolving, kept occurring. And something seemed to be continuing but different, a little different. Oh, in the past, you could look at the same type of calendaring and do comparative scientific analysis and say, yeah, new types of colds and flus appear. And people die, and along the way, these viruses keep mutating. And they seem to get worse and worse. Doctors have commented on this. But we started having a little bit of a twist, a bit more difference to the anomalies of things that were occurring. And what started happening, and this is very important, is to understand that people started having a problem getting a hold of the most effective cold relief medication. This basically meant that people would sneeze more, they would cough more, their symptoms would accelerate faster. And here we come to an apex, a mini apex in understanding the point that the spread pattern, if you measure it, if you sit down people and you bring out a bunch of custom lights and ultraviolet lights and you dim things, and people start coughing and sneezing, you can see these particles moving. And if you test different people, different subjects, and you give them different types of cold relief medication, flu relief medication, that some of them have a different spread pattern than the others. It's quite significant, actually. The people who don't have access to cold relief medication that get the same type of viruses, again, they sneeze more, they snot all over themselves. They cough more. They spread a larger pattern. They have more disease getting spread more rapidly. That's actually 2 statistics. So the reality of this is that when you are looking at the calendar, there's some additional statistics that people don't seem to be paying a lot of attention to. And that is, as the higher quality cold relief medication was removed from the shelves in various stages, that the curve involving the spread of viruses changed. The reason that it changed is because the spread pattern was significantly rising. This meant that more people would become infected and more people would die. Now, part of the reasoning behind this was a history of, well, comparatively, you could make the argument, very small or incredibly small numbers overall of people were abusing cold relief medicine and repurposing it to turn it into some form of narcotic. Now, if you do experiments to recreate this and you bring scientists in, what generally will be noticed is you could go through a lot of statistics. And when you get to the point of cost analysis and say, how much does it cost to make a repurposed narcotic versus the street distribution system? And there seems to be, what I found, people who claim that it cost about 800% more, about 8 times more money to do it that way. There's other fragments of information where some people describe these certain other people as crackpots, as nutcases, as people that had issues because they were obtaining cold relief medication and repurposing it. And what they were doing wasn't necessarily even efficient. And of course, in the course of them doing this, they were involving themselves doing chemistry processes that they weren't necessarily trained to do. There were other problems, more fires. There were injuries, even deaths. But this tiny statistic, I would invite you to do intensive research yourself. Go on the web, please, go on the web, do a comprehensive series of research yourself. Look at the vast, wide array of arguments and statistics. Try to understand that you had people that were claiming that they were trying to be parental. Sometimes the claims were even, well, we have to do this because we have to protect people from themselves. Because some people are not capable of making the proper decisions, therefore we have to arrest them for what they're doing and put them in jail. And then there were some changes, and many of these people would end up getting doctors. They would end up getting treatments because many felt and discovered that many of them, well, they really did have mental issues. So yes, these people were basically put into forms of programs with doctors. Sometimes people would be rearrested or given sentences, but there was an evolving of the way people would be treated. What's important here is that we need to do a better statistical analysis to come up and understand what happened. How significant was the spread pattern change? How many more extra people started dying? Was it 5? Was it 10? Was it 170 people? How many extra people per year were dying? We understand and we know that legally, the people who are denying people needed medication need to be removed from society. Their licenses would have to be taken away. Society would have to be protected from people who would say, we're deciding to put you on an all-tomato diet, including only using tomatoes as medication. And I'm one of those people, and I'm going to say it's pretty simple. It doesn't matter how you change the tomato diet and say, well, let's try the all-potato diet. That we're still looking at the same logic. the same problem, and yes, the same danger. So at this moment, we're coming up to another crossroads because there's some extra information here. Some of us went out of our way. We called up certain people. We did some statistical analysis, and we were looking at things. And from a scientific viewpoint, we had to inform some of these prosecutors that were involved in parental action that they were making a horrible mistake and that they were going to get a lot of people killed. And that, in my view, they were already getting people killed. Seemingly, we had anomaly statistics that weren't being attended to. People that were having incredible snotting fits. I'm talking vast amounts of fluid snot reactions. And this would happen sometimes when people were in cars on crowded freeways like Los Angeles. And this could cause them to lose their vehicle, lose their car, basically, control of their car. But generally what would happen is you would end up with a fender bender. But the reality is, we don't exactly know. Because these people did not want to do a proper comprehensive analysis. Because there was something else looming. Time itself was looming. That calendar, if we look back 20 years, at the mutative cold and flu virus, mutative accounting. In fact, we can look back even further. We can see these long-term tendencies. Scientifically, one would have to say that more people were being exposed, more people were dying. And because the virus was being gestated through more people, the mutative factor was accelerated. That's right, I'll say it again for some of you that may not have heard that. Because more people were exposed to the virus, that means that there were more variances, more types of mutations. And as you look at this long calendaring, again, go on the web, talk with many doctors about the mutative factor involving viruses and these various other items. Because yes, we have a series of statistics that we don't have the most comprehensive review on, and we need that. We need to be able to count the dead. Nobody deserves to die from incompetence or from intentional murder and not even be counted. At this point, my understanding is that I informed people at prosecutors' offices, at the AG's office, that, in my view, that people were dying and that diseases were mutating, and at any time we could get struck by a pandemic. And that this effective policy and this effective enforcement system was incompetent and would cause the deaths of tens of thousands, maybe millions of people. And that we immediately needed to address the situation from a true scientific standpoint, from a true, actual, valid, tactical table point, from a true parental point, and say that a few people who are crazy, that want to spend 800% more money repurposing cold medicine that they've snatched off the shelf somehow, and end up lighting themselves on fire because maybe they're crazy, that it would be wrong to let tens of thousands or millions of people die. The true parental decision here is to immediately restore the effective types of cold medication to over-the-counter status. Make them available. I spoke with other people that claimed that they had said similar things, and that in their view they had questioned these people, and that these people had not done proper scientific analysis, these prosecutors, especially at the high state level. So now we have it. COVID hit. And you can equate an understanding on the spread pattern. There are statistics. If you look, you can find them. You can find scientific information. Some people went ahead and did research. And as I looked at the information, I came to the conclusion that statistically more than 9,000 people must have died just the first year of COVID, so to speak. And then we had the second year. I was looking at upwards of 14,000+ people extra that may have died in California. But the reality here is far larger, because many other states also adopted these grandstanding type scenarios that prosecutors, in my view, were using to promote their own careers and completely ignore the truth and the reality of scientific evidence, as well as the legal mythology that would have to be addressed properly. In my view, these people flatly refused to do proper scientific analysis, and it's fairly clear to most people. I talked to many people, many retired people, that were very upset that long-standing cold medicine that had basically been available to them throughout their entire life was removed from the shelves, and they could not get access to it. They thought this whole thing was lunacy. They knew that extra people would die. They knew. They knew. Common sense, basically. So now we have an equative understanding where, as I researched again, it would seem that more than 60,000 people have died since basically 2019 to the present. That's comparable to Vietnam. I want you to think for a moment about all those bodies that would come home night after night from Vietnam. I want you to think about the right of people to be counted that, in my view, have been murdered. Because parties were told, and they refused. They flatly refused to do the analysis, and then stand up and admit that they were wrong, and immediately change the situation. Again, more than 60,000 dead people. At this moment, we don't seem to even have exact names equated to the dead. We have raw statistics that are undeniable because a pandemic points out things on a far more amplified, a larger scale, where it's simply just undeniable how many extra people died because somebody did something. They removed cold relief medicine from people who needed access to it. It's the same as those people who kept people locked away, would not let them go outside and get the medication that they needed. And then they got sick and sicker, and they died. Those people were charged with homicide. The statistical analysis of mass murder states that some of these people had to know. How could they be so grossly incompetent as to not understand basic scientific analysis, consult with people who would know, but they ignored people who told them. Doctors told them. Many of these medications have effectively been on the shelf for about 70 years, and you just remove them. You're killing people. You need to stop. I'm a doctor, and you're not a doctor. You're a grandstander, and you're committing homicide. So now we're at that review point in time. Who are you? Who are you? As a voter, who are you? Because at this moment, we hold an additional secret Vietnam in our hands. We've got the extra people that died from the pandemic, and the people who died from that slow removal process that occurred over 2 decades. Some would argue in some places it was even further back than that there were actually even other effective medications that would even boost your immune system. And these had all been removed. And now, at this moment, who are you? Because in front of you is another calendar we haven't got to yet, and another one, and another one, and another one. You can stop another secret Vietnam from happening if you stand up today and you use your brain. Maybe you need help with a dollar calculator to work some of these numbers. Go on the web, research items. Consult with many doctors. It's in your hands. I don't want to hear you people whining out in public that you want to save a couple of dozen people's lives because somebody might pop because the government was being run improperly by employees that were incompetent. I want you to stand up and realize we're talking about a Vietnam. A Vietnam. Who are you? I've taken measures with professionals. We've begun the sequence with the presidential candidate panel. We're beginning setting out the framework and the structure to begin the sequences of arrests that are necessary to prosecute these people for committing mass genocide. There's no choice. We cannot allow these people to disrespect veteran families or any family. We cannot allow them to disrespect the need of elderly people to get quality cold relief medication. We are not going to lie and assist these people in grandstanding anymore. I never did it to begin with, personally. There is no choice but to stand up and join with us. Join with us and deal with people who are mass murderers and begin the process of removing these people that honestly, at the very least, have to be incompetent. Negligence. But mass deaths from negligence get punished. Long prison sentences are required. We're talking about life in prison. We're talking about the death toll of a Vietnam. And as it progressed from beginning with small numbers, remember how this started. There were small numbers, and they lied. They hid, they lied, and the numbers grew, and the numbers grew, and the numbers grew, just like that woman that put those people on the tomato diet. Just like those maniacs. We have to be parental and save our society from more upcoming Vietnams. We have it in our hand to do this right now. To arrest these people, to take them into custody, to remove them from harming society anymore. Congress can act immediately and order the restoration of all cold remedy medicine to be restored to the shelves. We can do this. Who are you? Who are you? That concludes our special presentation. My name is Michael Crosby, and yes, I am a candidate for POTUS. And at the moment, I think many of you felt that there was a lot of information out there that would seem to indicate that it's inevitable that Mr. Trump is going to go to prison. But I bring to you on the table that there's too much information. There's a lot of crossover information that some of us who are archivers have run into as well. There are many other arguments that need to be addressed that haven't been addressed. Violence against me, attempted assassinations. I've shared for 2 years on X the violence, the broken glass, the loss of vehicles, the burglaries, the stealing of classified information that has occurred, the dereliction of duty, the blacklisting by Julie Su, the blacklisting by Shirley Weber, by the current AG's office. And yes, there are also sequences involving dereliction of duty that directly go right back to Kamala Harris. Arkansas investigated. They came to these conclusions that it was definitive, that officers were harassing an archiver, and California assisted and aided and abetted repeatedly in blocking prosecutions and refusing their duty to participate in protecting the Constitution of the United States, refusing to protect the process of elections, refusing to protect archivers. These has, of course, led to more damage, the theft and destruction of many archival items, artifacts, older than the Constitution of the United States. Yet the Constitution is specific. Anybody who causes damage to an archive, the loss of artifacts, who attacks other candidates, attacks candidates' incomes, who is in dereliction of duty in crisis, who is in dereliction of duty, respective to protecting archivers, respective to protecting the process of election. These are areas that have laws that add up, that come with a mandatory death penalty. I urge you to immediately read the Constitution of the United States and understand my position and how important it is to more rapidly get these teams assembled, get this framework finished up, and begin the sequence to arrest these parties, remove them from our society, and see that many of them get punished. And yes, our Constitution does have a strictness, and many of them will face the death penalty. Among these people on the list that have to immediately be arrested and disqualified from elections is also Kamala Harris. I ask again, who are you? Everybody's being recorded on SAR satellite in full 3D. Who are you? Who are you? As people shoot at me, as they break in, as there's been 18 mobile archive broadcast vehicles lost. Who are you? As all of this has been recorded on SAR, and it's connected to these people? Julie Su, Shirley Weber, the current AG, Kamala Harris. Who are you? You've all been recorded. Your actions showing your inaction are dereliction of duty. Voters, Who are you? Who are you? I'd like to thank you for participating in this special edition of our ongoing emergency situation. My name is Michael Crosby, and I'm a candidate for Potus.